Welcome, Lions fans, to another episode of Believe in Lions podcast. I am Brandon Brown, joined again by Glover Quinn, and we're all smiles today. I mean, after Sunday afternoon's game in Dallas, look, man, Glover and I talked about it last week. Lions favored by 3.5, I think it was. Wasn't a big spread. Going to Dallas, coming off the bye. Dallas had a little bit to prove. Going back to last year's game, there was some weirdness, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But, dude, 47-9. I look. You played for the Lions. You got love. You've got the Honolulu blue in the veins, so to speak. But there's no way you could have thought it was going to look like that.
No, I didn't. I didn't think it would look, like that. But I did know that the Lions, they keep receipts, and
we'll get in. We're going to talk about those receipts a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
I knew they were going back to Dallas, and they had something to prove. And I think over the history, I can't even say the history. I would say the recent history, dating back to even when I was with the Lions and we played the Cowboys in Dallas. The Lions just haven't had a lot of favorable breaks in Dallas. And so this team right here went down there with something to prove, and they went out and executed in every facet of the game from start to finish and played one of the most dominating NFL football games you've probably ever seen.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I wanted to ask you about that, and then we'll get into those receipts, which are, I mean, dude, almost kind of unheard of in the NFL. You just don't see stuff like that. So we'll get into that in a second. But you mentioned maybe one of the most dominating games you've ever seen. You just don't see 40-point wins in the NFL. Like, the teams are just too good. Like, the bad teams even just don't lose like that. There's actually been a couple this year that have been pretty lopsided. But I don't know if you've ever been a part of one like that. I was going to ask that. Like, how rare is it to win like that and to win an NFL game by almost 40 points?
I mean, it's rare. The competition is so high. The talent level is so high. The teams are pretty, I mean, it's tough to win. A lot of great players, a lot of great coaches. And so you really don't see, most of the games throughout the course of the week is 1-score games, 3 points here or there. You just never know. So to come out, especially on the road, and play like that, beat Dallas at home. I know Dallas has been struggling at home. They don't play really well at home. It's, playing in Dallas, it's a circus out there, when it's game day. Jerry World is what it is. It's a circus. And the Cowboys haven't responded well playing at home this year. And so the Lions came in, and I'm sure the Lions fans traveled well. And they took over that stadium from, like I said, from the very beginning. The Cowboys were never in the game. I don't even know if they showed up. They're still in the hotel. Seriously, they never showed up to that game. And so it was just one of the most satisfying games I've watched in a long time.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of Jerry, the Lions might have broke him for a little bit. He had a couple radio spots, I know, the next day or the days after, and he did not sound healthy. I mean, the dude was yelling at hosts, and 40-point loss in your home stadium can do that to you a little bit. Let's talk about these receipts for a couple minutes, then we'll turn our attention forward. We'll talk about the Aidan Hutchinson injury, obviously, and then take a look at the matchup with the Vikings this weekend. Those receipts that you mentioned last year, the whole tackle eligible thing, and the Lions lose a regular season game, got some revenge in the playoffs, but clearly they didn't forget about it. You've got Ben Johnson putting Dan Skipper at wide receiver, running. I don't know if you saw the clip of the route that he ran. I'm not sure what that was, but he was out there. They're doing a hook and ladder to Penei Sewell, one of the most athletic tackles in the game. They had multiple tackle eligibles all throughout. Like, it was very clear. They're like, okay, we remember last year. That's another thing. You just don't see that in the NFL. It's like there was almost like a college feel to it. Like, we're better than you. We're going to play with our food. We're going to embarrass you on your home field. We're going to put big 6'9" dudes that weigh 320 pounds out at wide receiver. I'm going to ask again, have you ever seen anything like that? Like, just the sheer trolling that the Lions seem to be doing throughout the course of that game.
Nah, I mean, you haven't. You really don't see that at the NFL level, but the Lions definitely clearly came in with it on their mind. They practiced on those plays. I mean, for them to be running hook and ladders to the tackle, throwing, they had a tackle eligible to Taylor Decker in the end zone. They tried to hit one. They had obviously Skipper, Panay. Like, I mean, I don't know if you've had an NFL game where you had 3 different O linemen catch passes or run routes or things like that. So, and they obviously have been practicing on that stuff. That's not something that you don't just pull out a hook and ladder to the tackle on one day of practice throughout the week. You know what I'm saying? Like, this has been something that they've been brewing and thinking of for a while. And obviously the game dictates kind of how some of those things come out. I'm sure if it was a close, 1-score game, you're probably not getting some of those plays because the possessions are very precious. But when you get in a game where you're just absolutely blowing a team out and you feel like you control every aspect of the game, offensively, defensively, special teams, you're not afraid to pull out some of those plays, especially when you're up 30 points. Like, you're definitely now pulling out all the stops. You want to rub it in the face. You're trying to send a message that, hey, we're really here and we didn't forget.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen it. I mean, I've been a fan of the game for my whole life. And just like you said, 3 different offensive linemen splitting out, running routes, hooking. I've never seen a tackle hook and ladder. I have never seen that.
Never.
Not at the NFL. Maybe you might catch that in some weird high school game. Maybe a peewee game where the kid's too big to play a skill position. So, all right, we'll pitch it to him at tackle. But I have never seen that at the collegiate or professional level. And Panay's a good enough athlete to try to pull it off. And that's now, you remember they did the one with Jahmyr Gibbs earlier this year, like, to perfection. I mean, that was so perfectly timed up. I think it was Amon-Ra, if I'm not mistaken, caught it and pitched it to Jahmyr for a touchdown. And Panay probably would have had his, but they called a little ticky-tack man downfield. So anyway, just some crazy stuff happening in that game. To the good. To the bad, you lose Aidan Hutchinson for the year. He battled slight injuries while he was at Michigan, but that's been a dude that's been relatively healthy his entire football career. I remember when I covered him at Michigan and he was dealing with the ankle, he talked about how he'd never been hurt in his life. Like, he had never missed any games at any level. Then he missed some games at Michigan, and now he's been relatively healthy as a pro, and now he gets this season-ending injury. I believe you talked about yourself being, relatively healthy your whole career just about. So I don't know from your own personal experience if you can touch on it, but and you saw it on his face as soon as he laid on the ground. I broke it. It's broke. You could see it. It was really bad. Try to put yourself in Aidan Hutchinson's shoes right now, 2 days removed from this. Surgery went well, and apparently it was a clean bone break, so hopefully no lingering effects. Where do you think he's at right now as a young player? I mean, not even to his prime yet, but playing as good as anybody in the league.
I mean, that's definitely devastating, man. I feel so bad for him because he was off to a historic start to the season. I had no doubt that he was going to put up some incredible numbers and probably be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. So you definitely feel bad, man. Your heart breaks for that kid. Obviously a hard worker, leader, loves the game. I mean, playing for the city that he's from, like, what great story that is. And so for him to be dealing with this right now, injury of that magnitude is not something that, you get an injury, a high ankle, and you're out for a couple games in the NFL. But to get a devastating injury like that, it's tough. I've seen it before from different teammates, and you definitely can come back from it and continue to play at a high level. But it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of dedication. And he's definitely a guy that I feel like will attack the rehab, attack everything. And he's young, his body, his bones, hopefully they heal quickly. And he'll be back to the Aidan that we've come to know and we've come to love. So, prayers just go out to him and his recovery, his mental state. He's never, like you say, he's never had to deal with an injury of this magnitude, be away from the game for this long. So, I think he's a strong kid mentally, but he's never really been in this situation. So let's make sure we keep, his spirits lifted. If you have some type of contact with him, just check in from time to time. But like I said, I think he has a great support system around him, great coaching staff, great teammates, great trainers. I think he'll bounce back, but it's definitely a huge loss for the Detroit Lions. And I think we're definitely going to see the effects of not having him out there.
Yeah. I had the pleasure of getting to know him quite well. I used to cover recruiting for Michigan. I've known Aidan since he was in 10th grade, got to know his family quite well. Covered Michigan for 10 years. And I actually heard Sharon Moore, Michigan head coach, on the radio this morning here in the Detroit area talking about if any kid can beat that and be better when he comes back, it's Aidan. And to your point, he is a mentally strong kid, but it's uncharted waters for him. It is. He's never dealt with an injury like this, and it can be a lot for someone to handle. Just like you said, being away from the game, not being able to do the things he's used to doing every single day. And, for the Lions, there's a lot of layers. He's a great practice player, kind of the heart and soul, as you said. He's a young guy, but already, gets a lot of credit for kind of turning the Lions around a little bit in a short time under Dan Campbell, from the area, and incredibly productive. So on all those levels, it's a big loss. Before he was even hurt, you and I talked about the Lions maybe trying to make a trade and add some help opposite Aidan Hutchinson. Well, now you don't even have Aidan over there anymore. You already lost Marcus Davenport. What should the Lions do now at this point? I mean, they're still a good team. I know some people are like, oh, pack the season up, you lose. Like that's not even on these guys' mind, not even a little bit. So what's the move now? What should Brad Holmes, in all reality, do? And fans are like, just go get this guy and you're good. But it's not Madden, it's not fantasy football. So what can Brad Holmes realistically do right now?
I mean, I think they're gonna have to make a move. I think they're clearing some space. We just seen the deal with Liam McNeil. Feel like they're trying to make some kind of room. I don't know if they're gonna bring in somebody that is here for a season, or somebody that's here for a few seasons, or at least the opportunity to be there for a few seasons. But you definitely got to. Losing Davenport and Hutchinson. You definitely got to add something to your pass rush. Your defense has been playing well. Your secondary has been playing extremely well, but a lot of that goes with the rush. Rush and coverage go hand in hand. Great coverage leads to better sacks. Great sacks leads to great interceptions. Those things go hand in hand. And so I don't know exactly what they're going to do. I think you can trust that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are going to make a good decision. They've been doing it for a few years now. So I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I don't think they're going to leverage their future for somebody, because they got, I was sitting there looking. They got some big time stars, man, and they got some big time players. And so money is going to be, they've paid Jared Goff, they've paid David Montgomery, they've paid amon-ra St. Brown, they paid. You got old lineman guys, Panay, you got Ragnow, you got Decker. That's a lot of guys. And then you look on the defensive side of the ball, they paid McNeil. You're going to have to do something with, these safeties. Obviously, you got Kirby that's playing really well right now. You got Brandon. How did I forget his name?
Brian Branch.
Brian Branch.
Yep.
He's only in second year, but that means next year he's going to be coming up after year 3. Probably going to have to extend him. So they got a lot of decisions. Jahmyr Gibbs and all these guys most of these guys are homegrown guys that they've drafted. Kirby Joseph they drafted. Brian Branch they drafted. Jahmyr Gibbs they drafted. Panay Sewell, Frank Ragg, all these guys are guys that they've drafted and raised in that system. So you try to keep most of those homegrown guys. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep all of them, but they're going to have to make some kind of move and try to keep the pass rush going, because I think they have a great opportunity this year. A great team. Like I said, losing Aidan Hutchinson definitely puts a damper in it. But I think they have a good enough team where they can will their way around it. But it's just going to look a little different, and everybody's going to have to step their game up for sure.
And Aidan, That ain't gonna be that's not gonna be a cheap extension when that comes around. I mean,
Right.
He's obviously hurt right now, but they're not. He needs to be a Lion for life. Like people are already on that train with him, and so that's their Laporte. I mean, the list goes on and on. Like this team is stacked with dudes 26 and under that they've drafted. That eventually, 3-4 years in, they're gonna have to do some contract stuff. So
and this is year 3 for Aidan, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So they're gonna have to pick up his 5th-year option after this year anyway.
Yep. So I mean that's a lot to deal with for Brad Holmes, and you're right.
And I mean, from a business side, it sucks having to be put in this situation because you're gonna have a kid that's played extremely well in his first 3 years, consistently getting better and better and better, and now you suffer a devastating injury that's going to end your season. And they're going to have to make the decision because they don't know how he's going to come back. They trust in that he's going to come back and be the same player, but you never know. But they're going to have to make that decision and pick up his 5th-year option after this year. They can't afford to not pick up his 5th-year option. So Aidan's going to be locked in. McNeil is locked in. I mean, you got linebackers coming up. Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell was a first-rounder. And then, like I said, in the secondary, you got Brian Branch, you got Kirby. I mean, you got guys.
Yeah,
you got guys, and all those guys are big time guys. And so, somebody's gonna have to get left out. Obviously, we know you. I mean, well, it's new salary cap, so they got more money to play with, but that's a lot of big deals. I mean, that's almost. I mean, between Jared, Amon, McNeil. I mean, that's $300 million deals right there for the most part, right?
Yep.
And then you look at Panay. I mean,
the list is so long, man. It really is. Like Brad Holmes is almost drafted too well to even set himself up for success. It's a good problem to have, but
great problem to have.
At some point, it does become a bit of a problem, just numbers wise. So we'll see how that all plays out. Okay, here's the deal. The pipe dream guy, and it's already being talked about on Detroit sports radio around here, is Myles Garrett. I don't know how realistic that is, but they did just trade Amari Cooper. They're really kind of handcuffed a little bit because they've got this monstrous contract with Deshaun Watson, and he just doesn't look like it. And they can't get rid of him via trade because of the contract. They can't cut him because of the cap. So they're kind of stuck. They're like in the middle of a rebuild. Even though they're paying a quarterback, some of the highest money in the league. And now you've got Myles Garrett sitting there. And the talk is maybe the Lions would have to give up, 2 firsts and a second or 2 firsts and a third or more. And I heard you say it earlier. That's why I brought it up, because you said you don't want to leverage the future. You don't want to risk too much for maybe a 1-year Band-Aid but Myles Garrett's in his prime. You could sign him for 3 or 4 years and be more than happy with that. Then you get Aidan back there, and then you got a whole other thing to deal with. But is that realistic in your mind, or is that too big of a fish for Lions fans to be thinking about?
I mean, I think it could be realistic. Myles Garrett is a great player, great rusher. Definitely will be somebody that could aid into that defense, right? And it's somebody that has a lot of great years left ahead of him. Just all depends on what you have to give up to get him. But he would be somebody that you would think, okay, between him, Aidan Hutchinson come back next year, you'll be in the runnings to have not just a 1-year run, but a multiple year run at this thing from a defensive standpoint. And so I think he's definitely somebody that if they can get to the right number or the right assets, he's somebody that could be in play. He's right up the street in Cleveland. It's not a far transition from him right to Detroit. And so I definitely, feel like that's possible. Like you say, Cleveland's unloading guys. They're just, it's tough right now in Cleveland. I'll leave it at that. And so he's definitely somebody that's probably on the radar. And he's probably somebody that wants to get out of there. I feel like players – You want an opportunity to compete and win in the NFL, especially when you're in your prime. You've had individual success, you've done the sack things, you've done a lot of those things. You want to win and be able to compete from a team standpoint. going into playoffs, playing in big-time games in January. That's what you want as a player, and you want that when you're in your prime. You don't want that when you're limping out the league or, you know what I'm saying, you're on your last leg. You want it to be in those moments when you're in your prime so you can play a critical role in that. And I think this is a great opportunity for Myles Garrett. If it happens, I know Lions fans will be stoked. I know he'll be stoked. It's just what will the Lions have to give up to make that happen? We don't know. But Brad Holmes has done a great job. So you just have to trust that they're going to make the right decision and go with it.
Yeah. According to Pro Football Focus, the most efficient pass rusher in the NFL is Aidan Hutchinson, and number 2 is Myles Garrett. I mean, like that, you're not going to get a better 1-2 punch than that when you talk about rushing the passer. Myles Garrett will be 29 years old in December. I mean, you talk about late 20s, maybe 30, 31. That's your grown man, not getting old yet. Like he's dealt with a little bit of, you look at his arms, he's all taped up. But like he's a healthy, freak of an athlete, can do it all. He's good against the run. He's an absolute monster on the edge. And you put him with Aidan next year and beyond, sky's the limit for the defense, I think. And I know it's not Madden. I know it's not fantasy football, but I would love to see a move like that. I really would. And it would help so much for this year because of what you lost with Aidan and also Davenport already. So I wonder what I'd love to be a fly on the wall in Brad Holmes' office today. Just see what he's doing with that phone and see what he's doing and who he's talking to, because that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. All right, for the last couple minutes here, let's look at Minnesota. Sitting atop the NFC North at 5-0, man, and the Lions now are 4-1. Nobody had the Vikings here. They didn't really know what they were going to do with quarterback. Drafted J.J. McCarthy. He gets hurt. He's done for the year. So, okay, Sam Darnold, here you go. And he's playing great ball. I mean, he's got a lot of weapons. That certainly helps. He hasn't had that anywhere else in his career. But he's playing really, really good football right now. They are undefeated. They keep beating teams that nobody thinks they're going to beat. And now here come the Lions off of one of the most impressive games in the entire league this year. It's basically a pick'em game. Is it in Minnesota? I forgot to put that down on my notes right here. Is it in Minnesota?
I think it is.
I think it's in Minnesota. And I think the Vikings are actually favored by 1.5. So it's essentially a toss-up. I'm picking the Lions. I don't know how anybody could watch what they just did in Dallas and not pick the Lions, but they are the Vikings are undefeated, and they do seem to keep winning when people doubt them. What's your top 1, 2, and 3 things that the Lions need to do in Minnesota?
Well, I think they got to go out there and establish who they are. I mean, we've seen the only game that the Lions lost this year was when they decided to go away from their identity, in my opinion. And that was when they decided to throw the ball 60 times almost against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They never came out and established a run game. They did not get going from a running standpoint, a mentality standpoint that we're going to control the line of scrimmage offensively and defensively. We didn't see that in the Tampa Bay game, and that's the only game that they've lost. Since then, they've came out and made sure that they established the run game. They established the line of scrimmage offensively and defensively. And so I would feel like the Lions definitely have to do that. David Montgomery has been running extremely well. Jahmyr Gibbs is a great change-up. He's a change-of-pace guy, fast guy, but he has some power as well. He can run between the tackles. So those two guys running the ball, that's been opening up play-action passes to Jamison Williams. Like, he's that one guy that can get you 80 yards in one play, and you need that from a line standpoint. Amon-Ra has been a rock. Those guys block really well. They're going to have to come out, and Minnesota, I ain't going to lie, that's probably one of the funnest places to play that stadium. Their fans, it's a great environment. I love playing in Minnesota, and so it's going to be a great game. Top teams in the NFC North, 5-0 Vikings, 4-1 Lions. It's going to be a showdown. The Lions have to come out and run the ball. Do not turn the ball over. Their defense has thrived. I mean, they jumped up on the Texans. I think C.J. Stroud had more interceptions in that game than he's had in a lot of games in his whole career, right? Mm-hmm. So I think they're definitely going to have to not turn the ball over. Their defense has been playing well, very opportunistic. You turn the ball over and get them a short field, they got the weapons. They're going to punch it in for them for score. So the Lions have to make sure we establish the run game, do not turn the ball over, and you just can't give up big plays. We got to know what Justin Jefferson is at all times, and don't give up big plays to him. Force Sam Darnold to check the ball down and rally and be great tacklers. And I think if they can do that and go on the road and keep their paws and play like a well-oiled machine that they are, I think we'll see a Lions victory on Sunday.
There you have it. Yeah, 1:00 kick in Minnesota. So that's confirmed. Like you said, really another really good fan base. The NFC North is filled with those. I mean, Chicago fans, obviously Green Bay fans. We know about Detroit fans. All great places and great crowds to play in front of. That's cool to hear that from you. I don't know really. Minnesota just keeps surprising me. I know that, like you said, they beat Houston. Was it 34-7? I think they beat them up, and they just. Yeah, they just keep getting it done. Sam Darnold playing the best football of his career. Justin Jefferson's doing what he's doing. Adding Aaron Jones gives them you mentioned, you just keep it in front of you and check down. Well, that's not a bad option to check it down to when you've got Aaron Jones, great receiver out of the backfield. And you said the defense has been playing opportunistic. I know they've had some defensive touchdowns, not just giving the offense a short field, but just taking it right in themselves. They've had a couple defensive scores this year, so they're really kind of firing on all cylinders, too. I don't know if a team has looked as good as the Lions just looked, but Minnesota collectively, hey, 5-0 is 5-0. You don't get there by accident in the NFL. So Glover Quinn with great insight as always. I'm excited to watch this one. This is going to be the game of the week for sure. Everybody's tuning in when you've got a 5-0, 4-1. And how about, by the way, all the teams in the NFC North are multiple games over 500 now. Like it's a dogfight in that conference or in that division, and Lions could make a big statement. So Lions are going on the road. It's last thing, and then we'll get out of here. Lions are going on the road again. When you're coming off of a big win like that, do you go in thinking like, let's do it again, or like let's just get this however we can? Like let's get this one by double digits, or I don't care. 1 point.
I mean, division games. Division games are going to be tough, and so you're going in with the mindset that by any means necessary, we have to come out of here with a win. We don't care if it's 40 points or 1 point, but we have to come out of here with a win. So they're going in there with that mindset. They know it's going to be a tough game. Defensively, it's going to be a physical game. They know that, and so they'll be prepared. They know what's at stake. They know the magnitude. They are a mature team. They've went through some battles these last couple of years, making it deep in the playoffs. Like, they understand what's at stake right now. And so I think they're going to show up with the right mentality, and it's going to be a great game. Get your popcorn ready, sit down, get in front of a TV. Whatever it is you do it and you do it well, and be ready for a great game on Sunday. But I got the Lions winning this one.
Yeah, I got the Lions winning too. Like I said, I don't know how you can watch them on Sunday in Dallas and not think they can beat anybody in the league any given day. So he's got the Lions. I've got the Lions. We know everybody watching has the Lions, and we'll see if they can give Minnesota their first loss of the season. Thank you guys all for listening, and Glover and I will be back to check in next week.